الله حي ذو امتنان مولى وما له مكان سبحانه قد جل عن أين وكيف وزمان.
قال المؤلف رحمه الله: روى مسلم في صحيحه من حديث أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه. Muslim narrated in his Sahih from the hadith of Abu Hurairah, may Allah accept his deeds, أنه قال, that he said, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, the messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, لا يزال الناس يتساءلون حتى يقال هذا خلق الله الخلق فمن خلق الله. The messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, the people will not stop wondering until it is said, this, Allah created the creation. So who created Allah? فَمَنْ وَجَدَ ذَلِكَ فَلْيَقُلْ. So whoever finds that, then let him say, آمَنْتُ بِاللَّهِ وَرُسُلِهِ. I believe in Allah and His messengers. Here in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ is talking about someone who got waswaas. So he suffers from the whispers of the devil. He said, let that person say, آمَنْتُ بِاللَّهِ وَرُسُلِهِ. I believe in Allah and His messengers. فَفِي هَذَا الْحَدِيثِ دَوَاءٌ لِمَا يُخَالِجُ كَثِيرًا مِنَ النُّفُوسِ. In this hadith is the remedy for what is, I'm not sure the best way to translate يُخَالِجُ, in many of the selves, وَيَتَحَدَّثُ بِهِ كَثِيرٌ مِنَ النَّاسِ, and that which many people speak about, فِيمَا بَيْنَهُمْ, amongst themselves. وَقَدْ حَصَلَ مَا تَحَدَّثَ بِهِ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ فِي الْحَدِيثِ. And there happened what the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam spoke about in the hadith. وَقَوْلُهُمْ, they're saying, مَنْ خَلَقَ اللَّهُ هُوَ سُؤَالُ الْمُحَالِ. They're saying, who created Allah is a question about the impossible. وَذَلِكَ أَنَّ الَّذِي تَقْتَضِيهِ الْبَرَاهِينُ الْعَقْلِيَّةُ وَالنُّصُوصُ الْقُرْآنِيَّةُ. And that is that which the intellectual proofs dictate, and as well as the Quranic texts, أَنَّ صَانِعَ الْعَالَمِ أن صانع العالم يجب أن يكون أزليا, is that the maker of the world, it is necessary that he be eternal. فيستحيل أن يكون له خالق. And so it is impossible that he would have a creator. ثم الأزلي لا يكون إلا أبديا. Furthermore, what is eternal would not be but everlasting. Yani, what is beginningless would not be but endless. أي أن الذي لم يسبقه عدم لا يلحقه عدم. Meaning that the one who was never preceded by non-existence would not be caught or followed by non-existence. فبين الخالقية والمخلوقية اختلاف ظاهر. And so between being the creator and being the created is an obvious difference. فإن كان هذا خطورا يخطر في البال فعلاجه كما أشار إليه هذا الحديث. And so if this thought crosses the mind, then its treatment is as was signaled to in this hadith. أن ينحو عن هذا بغيره, for one to turn away from that and to direct himself towards something else. It means to cut it off, to ignore it, not to engage in it, not to entertain it. When that whisper of the devil crosses one's mind, he doesn't take hold of it and think about it and play with it and ponder on it, etc., etc., etc. That's the biggest thing that gets a person who has waswas. He can't stop himself from thinking about that nonsense that's hard. The religion is not difficult. Once the difficult concept crossed your mind, just the fact that it's hard should have been enough for you to throw it away. Just the fact that you came, like, once you thought about that, you found a roadblock, you found an obstacle, a mental obstacle in whatever it was you were thinking about right there. And not to mention, the person knows that he suffers from the whispers. He knows about himself that he suffers from the whispers. Then the whispers come to him. He knows that it's the whispers. And then he just indulges in it. That's foolish. Wallah. The child knows better when someone's teasing him and he starts ignoring that one. He says, I know you are, but what am I? Throws it back to him. The child can do that. The one who has the waswaas, a grown man, grown woman with waswaas, he can't stop. Can't help himself. But I think something helped some sisters who have waswas. So one sister had waswas, more than one sister actually. And I told her, did a man ever say to you like a corny line? No man ever came to you with just a really corny line and then you said, my God, this guy's a loser. So if you can do that, why you can't ignore the whispers? Didn't you recognize some garbage when you heard it? Did you brush it away? Same thing. And then that helped them, mashallah. فإن كان هذا خطورا يخطر في البال. So if this was some idea that crosses the mind, فعلاجه كما أشار إليه هذا الحديث, then its treatment is as this hadith has signaled to أن ينحو عن هذا بغيره, to turn away from this for something else. أي يشغل فكره بغيره, meaning to think about something else, to busy his thinking with something else. He cuts it off. He thinks about something else. That's why he says, Amantu billahi wa rusuli. It means he's cutting off this waswas. وَيَدْفَعَهُ بِمَا هُوَ الْمُعْتَقَدُ الصَّحِيحِ, and he pushes that whisper away with what is a correct conviction. وَلْيَقُلْ, and let him say, Amantu billahi wa rusulih, I believe in Allah and His messengers, or Amantu billahi wa bi rusulih, saying the ba twice, bi. I believe in Allah and in His messengers. فَإِنَّ هَذَا يَنْفَعُهُ فِي قَطْعِ هَذَا الْخَاطِرِ, for indeed, this will benefit him in cutting off that thought. And that came from the Prophet ﷺ. So it works. What doesn't work is to allow yourself to stay stuck thinking on that waswas. Common one is a person who's asking, if I say my shahada, but this and this and this, so do I have to say my shahada again after I just said my shahada? And the meaning of his question is, could a person say his shahada to get out of kufr and still be a kafir? And he's stuck in a loop. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. And while he knows what's kufr though, he knows it's kufr. He knows what's kufr and what's not kufr, and he's confused. After knowing what's kufr and what's not kufr, if he has to say his shahada and then say it again, he's basically asking, do I have to say my shahada twice now? One time for this and one time for that? La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. One should be embarrassed about that. He should be embarrassed about that. He should feel bad about that. That he let himself get caught like that. والخاطر هو ما لا تملك منعه من أن يرد على قلبك. And the khatir, which I'm translating as a thought or an idea, but here khatir is that which one does not possess the ability to repel. Meaning, not that he can't repel it, but in the first place it comes to him without his will. That's what he can't repel. He can't stop the onset of it. That's the part that he can't fight. It comes to him. But once it's there, he can throw it away. And that's what people who suffer from whispers don't do. Something crosses his mind. So once he finds it convoluted, then he should have thrown it away right away. If it doesn't flow like water, throw it away. The religion is easy. وَالْخَاطِرُ هُوَ مَا لَا تَمْلِكُ مَنْعَهُ. The khatir is that which you do not possess its prevention, from its onset. مِنْ أَنْ يَرِدَ عَلَى قَلْبِكَ. You can't stop it from crossing your heart. وَيَتَمَيَّزُ بِكَوْنِهِ بِلَا إِرَادَةٍ. What's particular about it is that it's without a will. So it's not a voluntary thought, it's an involuntary thought. وَأَمَّا الشَّكُّ فَبِإِرَادَةٍ. As for doubt, that's by one's will. The doubt is by one's will, because doubt means that he processed that in himself and then he became unable to determine one way or the other, so he settled on that. So he settled on a doubt. Says, is it this way or that way? I don't know, so I'm here now. This is my position, doubt. قال المؤلف رحمه الله, said the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, وَعَلَمْ أَنَّ أَقْسَامَ الْمَوْجُودِ ثَلَاثَةً. Know that the divisions of what exists are three. الأول أزلي أبدي وهو الله تعالى فقط. The first is the eternal, everlasting, the beginningless and endless, and that is Allah Ta'ala only. أي لا بداية ولا نهاية لوجوده, meaning that there's no beginning and there's no end for his existence. Now the Shaykh is going to explain, and then he's going to go and talk about the other types. He said the categories of existence are three. Important point to mention here before I read further. Categorization needs evidence. That's important. Don't let someone just bring you some categories of something. Oh, there's 3 types of this, there's 4 types of this. Or whatever, however many types. A categorization needs evidence. Like they say, for example, أقسام الكلام ثلاثة. There's 3 parts of speech in Arabic. And then they prove that. They show the evidence for that. Ism wa fi'l wa harf, because the ism is this and the fi'l is this and the harf is this. So there cannot be a 4th one. So they prove it actually. And they say also if there was another type, then had there been, we would have found it because of how thoroughly we've combed through the language. So they have actually evidence for their categorization. So the evidence for categorization could be a mental proof. Usually that's how it's going to be fundamentally. Categorize things by thinking about the difference between them. So you put each class in its own category. So it's going to have a mental proof, or it's going to have some textual proof. Now I say that, I don't want to go too far here. I say that because I actually had a conversation with someone today. He never responded. So he sent me today some documents, like as if to ask me. So one of the documents he sent me, it says the actions of the Prophet are wajibah or mustahabbah or mubah or zallah, 4 things. He said the actions of the prophets are obligatory and recommended and permissible and zallah, slip. And then from there he went talking. What's his evidence for that categorization in the first place? If he doesn't have evidence that this is a proper categorization, everything he said after that doesn't have strong evidence. So the brother couldn't respond to that, or he didn't. I don't know. If he had an answer, he didn't give it to me. We don't believe something just because someone said it. So, Ash-SharH, the explanation. Su'ila Abu Hanifa radiyallahu anhu anillahi. Abu Hanifa was asked about Allah. فقال, and so he said, كان كما هو ويكون على ما كان. He was as he is, and he shall be as he was. ذكره في إحدى رسائله الخمس. He mentioned that in one of his 5 treatises. فقوله, so his saying, كان كما هو, he was as he is. فيه إثبات الأزلية. it has in it the confirmation of beginninglessness. وَقَوْلُهُ وَيَكُونُ عَلَى مَا كَانَ, in his saying, and he shall be as he was, فِيهِ إِثْبَاتُ الْأَبَدِيَّةِ, in it is confirmation of everlastingness. فَاللَّهُ تَعَالَى لَا بِدَايَةَ لِوُجُودِهِ, and so Allah, there is no beginning for his existence. لِأَنَّهُ أَزَلِي, because he is beginningless, he is eternal. The word eternal in English can mean without an end. So you should know that when we say eternal amongst ourselves, we have become accustomed to restricting that to without a beginning. But it could mean without an end. Someone might say, people will be in hell eternally. They mean everlastingly. So be mindful about that. They're not wrong in their wording. فَاللَّهُ تَعَالَى لَا بِدَايَةَ لِوُجُودِهِ, and so Allah Ta'ala, there is no beginning for his existence. لِأَنَّهُ أَزَلِي, because he is eternal, meaning without a beginning. وَبِثُبُوتِ الْقِدَمِ لَهُ عَقْلًا وَجَبَ لَهُ الْبَقَاءُ, and by the confirmation of eternality for him intellectually, obligatory, necessary for him is everlastingness. لِأَنَّهُ لَوْ أَمْكَنَ أَنْ يَلْحَقَهُ الْعَدَمُ, because had it been possible that non-existence could catch him, لَانْتَفَى عَنْهُ الْقِدَمُ, then eternality would be negated from him. وَانْتِفَاءُ الْقِدَمِ عَنْهُ مُسْتَحِيلٌ, and negating eternality from him is impossible. فَانْتَفَى عَنْهُ إِمْكَانُ الْفَنَاءِ, and so negated from him actually is the possibility of vanishing or annihilation. فَهُوَ الْبَاقِي لِذَاتِهِ, and so he is the everlasting by himself. Very literally, the word al-baqi could mean remaining, lasting, staying, just in the literal sense of the word. So Allah is al-baqi, for him it means everlasting. وَيَجِبُ الْقِدَمُ أَيْضًا لِصِفَاتِهِ, and necessary is the eternality also for his attributes. لِأَنَّهُ لَوْ لَمْ تَكُنْ صِفَاتُهُ أَزَلِيَّةً, because had his attributes not been eternal, بَلْ كَانَتْ تَحْدُثُ فِي الذَّاتِ, rather they were occurring, happening in the self of Allah, لَكَانَ ذَلِكَ مُوجِبًا لِحُدُوثِ الذَّاتِ, that would have been indicative or dictating or necessitating that the self be created. فَعُلِمَ مِنْ ذَلِكَ أَنَّهُ لَا يَطْرَأُ عَلَى اللَّهِ صِفَةٌ لَمْ تَكُنْ فِي الْأَزَلِ, and so known from that is that there does not happen to Allah an attribute that was not existing, was not confirmed in eternity. وَلَا يَتَجَدَّدُ لَهُ عِلْمٌ, and not renewed for him is there any knowledge. ولا إرادة ولا قدرة ولا حياة ولا سمع ولا بصر أيضا, nor does there recur for him or occur for him or renew for him. There's another word that I used once. Inshallah, it'll come to me. Nor does there renew for him any will, nor any power, nor any life, nor hearing, nor sight also. That's for the creations. Like, we will lose our lives and then we will regain our lives when Allah brings us back. That's because we're created. We are strong and then we are weak. So that's the attributes occurring in ourselves. So we are created. لا زيادة ولا نقصان في صفاته, there is no addition nor any subtraction in his attributes or concerning his attributes. They are eternal and everlasting and unchanging. لأن الذي يزيد وينقص فهو حادث مخلوق, because whatever increases and decreases is a created event, or a created occurrence, or a created happening. فَعِلْمُهُ تَعَالَى لَا يَزِيدُ وَلَا يَنْقُص. And so his knowledge, exalted is he, does not increase nor decrease. وَكَذَلِكَ ثَائِرُ الصِّفَاتِ. Likewise, the rest of his attributes. وَلَقَدْ زَاغَ أَحْمَدُ بْنُ تَيْمِيَّةَ. And deviated did Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah. فَقَالَ بِوُجُودِ الْمَخْلُوقِ مَعَ اللَّهِ فِي الْأَزَلِ. And he spoke about the existence of creation with Allah in eternity. وَقَالَ إِنَّهُ تَحْدُثُ فِي ذَاتِ اللَّهِ الصِّفَاتِ. And he said that there occurs in the self of Allah attributes. فَتَحْدُثُ لَهُ إِرَادَةٌ بَعْدَ إِرَادَةٍ وَكَلَامٌ بَعْدَ كَلَامٍ. And so there occurs to him will after will and speech after speech. So what that means is he basically believes that Allah would do something and then stop doing it. And then he would do something and then he would stop doing it. And that Allah would speak and then he would stop speaking. And then he would speak again and then he would stop speaking. That's blasphemy. That's created. That's something created. وَلَمْ يَدْرِ أَنَّ حُدُوثَ الصِّفَاتِ فِي الذَّاتِ يُوجِبُ كَوْنَ الذَّاتِ حَادِثًا. And he didn't know that the createdness of attributes in the self necessitates that the self, the very self, would be created. فهو في قوله إنه لم يزل مع الله مخلوق قلد الفلاسفة. And so he, in his saying that there did not cease to be with Allah a creation, he has imitated the philosophers, although he doesn't admit to that. And he holds himself at too high of an esteem to say that about himself. وَلَقَدْ كَذَبَ مَنْ قَالَ فِي وَصْفِهِ إِنَّهُ لِسَانُ الْمُتَكَلِّمِينَ عَلَى مَذْهَبِ السَّلَفِ. And lied by God has whoever said when describing Ibn Taymiyyah that he is the spokesman of the theologians upon the way of the Salaf. وَهُوَ فِي الْحَقِيقَةِ مُبْتَدِعٌ فِي الْاعْتِقَادِ وَفِي الْأَحْكَامِ. While he is in reality a heretic in convictions and in rules. وَقَدْ خَرَقَ الْإِجْمَاعَ فِي مَسَائِلَ عَدِيدَةٍ. And he has breached the consensus in numerous cases. فِي الطَّلَاقِ وَغَيْرِهِ. In divorce and other than that. كَمَا قَالَ الْحَافِظُ أَبُو زُرْعَةَ الْعِرَاقِيّ. Just as said that Hafiz Abu Zur'ah Al-Iraqi. قال المؤلف رحمه الله, said the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, وحكم من يقول إن هناك شيئا أزليا سوى الله تكفير قطعا. And the judgment of whoever says that there is something eternal other than Allah is the charge of blasphemy definitively. وَلِذَلِكَ كَفَرَتِ الْفَلَاسِفَةُ بِاعْتِقَادِهِمُ السَّفِيهِ أَنَّ الْعَالَمَ قَدِيمٌ أَزَلِيٌّ. And for that reason, the philosophers blasphemed by their foolish conviction that the world is eternal and beginningless. لِأَنَّ الْأَزَلِيَّةَ لَا تَصِحُّ إِلَّا لِلَّهِ تَعَالَى فَقَطْ. Because beginninglessness is not valid except for Allah Ta'ala only. I never saw that beginninglessness is considered a correct word. So there's two sayings in English. One saying is suffixes and prefixes, you can't just put them on anything. There are words that are known to have suffixes and prefixes, and it's stuck like that. You can't put it on anything. And another is that these suffixes and prefixes, they have meanings and usages, so you use them. So you affix them where you need them. So following that, I'm saying beginninglessness. You might put ER on something that's not common because it gives the meaning you need. So that's a function of the language. It seems that it should work like that. Wallahu a'lam. Allah knows best about it. Ash-SharH, the explanation, من اعتقد أن العالم أزلي لا بداية له. Whoever had the conviction that the world is eternal without a beginning for it, وأنه لم يزل موجودا مع الله, and that it never ceased to be existing with Allah, بمادته وصورته أو بمادته فقط. Whether he believed that it was eternally existing in its material and its image as it is eternally, or he believes that only its material is eternal, not the image of it. Like he believes that all the images we see, they're all created, but the material is eternal. And that material was in a different image previously, prior to that. And before that, the same material was in a different image. Both of those are blasphemy, believing that the world is eternal by its material and its picture, its image, its appearance. Or whoever believes that the world is eternal in its material only, but that the shapes of different things are transient. The material is eternal and the shapes are transient. That's blasphemy too. Transient means temporary, shifting and changing. Coming and going, yani. Ibn Taymiyyah, like Ibn Taymiyyah, who believes like that, like Ibn Taymiyyah, that it's in its material is eternal, not the thing itself. فهو كافر, then he's a blasphemer. قال الزركشي في كتابه تشنيف المسامع, said الزركشي in his book تشنيف المسامع, وهذا العالم بجملته علويه وسفليه وجواهره وأعراضه محدث. This world in its totality, its upper and its lower, its particles and its transient qualities are created or have a beginning or are events or eventual or occurrences or happenings. بِمَادَّتِهِ وَصُورَتِهِ, by its material and its appearance. All of it is created. كَانَ عَدَمًا فَصَارَ مَوْجُودًا, it was non-existent, then it became existent. وَعَلَيْهِ إِجْمَاعُ أَهْلِ الْمِلَلِ, and upon that is the consensus of the people of all of the religions. وَلَمْ يُخَالِفْ إِلَّا الْفَلَاسِفَةِ, and no one opposed that but the philosophers. وَمِنْهُمْ الْفَارَابِيُّ وَابْنُ سِينَا, and amongst them is Al-Farabi and Ibn Sina. قَالُوا إِنَّهُ قَدِيمٌ بِمَادَّتِهِ وَصُورَتِهِ, they said, indeed, the world is eternal by its material and its image. وَقِيلَ قَدِيمُ الْمَادَّةِ مُحْدَثُ الصُّورَةِ, and it was said amongst them that it is eternal in its material, but created in its appearance. ثم قال, and then he said, وَقَدْ ضَلَّلَهُمُ الْمُسْلِمُونَ فِي ذَلِكَ وَكَفَّرُوهُم, and the Muslims have deemed them as misguided and have deemed them concerning that as blasphemers. انتهى, end quote. ويعني بذلك أن هذا كفر بإجماع علماء الإسلام, and he means by that this is blasphemy by the consensus of the scholars of Islam. ابن تيمية تبع المحدثين من الفلاسفة. Ibn Taymiyyah followed the latter day philosophers, not the prior ones. So falsafa, philosophy, is haram. That's correct. That's correct saying. And what it is a mental craft. It's like a game that قد يقال, anyone could play, but not everyone is as good as it, not everyone is as good at it as others. Not that it's good, but not everyone can do it as strongly as others. What's that mental game? It's the ability to think out of the box, to come with abstract ideas that actually don't really have proof, and then to argue for those ideas, to substantiate them. And the base of philosophy is deeming the intellect as the ultimate authority. That's the only thing that philosophers have in common. What they all have in common is that they believe that the intellect is the ultimate authority. And then beyond that, they disagree with each other. So a philosopher, philosoph, is not just a thinker. People use this word loosely sometimes. Some people use it in the very sense for which it is, and some people use it loosely. For some people, anytime someone is a profound thinker, they will call him a philosopher. And this is really not what philosophy is. Philosophy is a craft, a mental craft in which one thinks out of the box. He practices that. It's a craft, something that he does. He applies that in his life. It's part of his lifestyle. So he doesn't think straightforwardly. Not straightforwardly, rather different from straightforward. So, for example, the philosopher would say, you see this house that we're in? I bet you think this house is still, isn't it? Let me tell you, actually, though, why this house is moving. This wall here, you think that wall is still? I'll tell you why that wall is moving. It's always moving. You see that sun going across the sky? I bet it looks like it's moving, doesn't it? Let me actually tell you why it's not moving. That's falsafa. That case in itself about the movement of the sun originates from falsafa. That's a person who was a philosopher, and he looked at the sun and he said, how could I argue that the sun is not moving? And then he goes through the process to do so. How can I argue that the wall is moving? And then he goes through the process to do so. And they come up with all kinds of ideas. So some of them said that nothing exists in reality. And that's where they get the idea for Matrix. Matrix, the movie The Matrix, that's falsafa. Even the movie itself is loaded with falsafa. All kinds of stupid ideas and stupid stuff. If you really watch, I'm not encouraging you to waste your time on it, but if you watch The Matrix and pay attention to all the stuff they say, a lot of it is just fluff. It doesn't really mean something. It's going in circles. Falsafa. But the idea that nothing is existing, it's not real. What's that? The Matrix is supposed to be about transsexuals? Oh, that's... Reborn. Yeah, and you mean they're doing a new Matrix, or they're just bringing a new... Oh, okay. About being transsexual. Yeah, so they say. So they say. Probably... Yeah, I think they are both trans, those directors. But I don't know if they really meant that originally or if they're claiming that now. Because what people do is, what I noticed in this day, there actually is like a falsafa now, a new falsafa, if it's not old, I don't know it, which is this social justice mindset, this social justice idea. It's like a madhab, certain falsafa involved there. Amongst their beliefs is that everyone's the same, men and women, genders are the same. Where'd they get that? Even though you can see the difference, it's obvious. But they're ignoring that. That's some sort of falsafa, and it's pretty stupid. So anyway, they say all sorts of things. So some of them say, but really, originally, regardless what they claim now, really the Matrix is from Sophism or Sophism. That's the original philosophic idea that they are depicting, which is that things don't really exist. It's all imagination. Those are amongst the weakest of philosophers, actually. The scholar said, those ones, how do you refute them? You beat them and take their money. That's how you refute them. Very strong, actually. That's very strong. I used it once for a guy who's bigger than me, too. So he said, I think that the world doesn't even exist. I said, so how about if I punch you in your face and take your money? And then he was just like, did you just say that to me? But he didn't have an answer, though. And I left him silent. He didn't say anything, and then I didn't say anything. Some of them said that everything in the world has an eternal reflection, basically, or something like that. Has a version in the upper world that is eternal, a version of that thing. There's like myself and whatever is here in my room, for example, my mouse here, my pen here, my siwak here. According to some of those philosophers, there's some eternal reflection of this pen in the upper world. And for this siwak and this mouse and myself and everything. They have no evidence for that. Some of them said that the world is beginningless, but it's still created at the same time. That's falsafa. That's exactly as falsafa. What are they saying? They're saying, well, the world is created, but it has no beginning. How is that? Really, that's so stupid. So stupid. But he's going to look you in a straight face. He's going to look you in your eye with a straight face. And if he has an audience, he's going to try to convince them. And he says, well, because the creator, the type of thing he is a creator. That's the type of thing he is. So what he does by his nature is he creates. All that's blasphemy, but that's how they talk. They say by his nature he creates. And he is eternal. So if he's eternal and by his nature he's creating, he must have been creating in eternity. That's what makes him the creator. So there must have been a creation in eternity so that he would be the creator in eternity. So there is an eternal creation and there's an eternal creator. So there's a creation that's eternal. And therefore, there are two types of eternity, two types of beginninglessness. There's I don't know their wordings, but in meaning they're saying there's a default one, beginninglessness, and then there's a subordinate one. The one by default, that's the creator. He's like the sun, shining. And the one that's subordinate is like the rays of the sun. That's the creation. So the sun's always shining in eternity. That's the sun. And so it's rays that come forth from it. Like that. That's falsafa. And they put that in all, that seeped, falsafa seeped into, in Western education, seeped into all branches of education. And it is existing very heavily in psychology, psychiatry. It's falsafa, all falsafa. And they like circular logic. Anytime they can put something in a circle, they put it in a circle. They think that's clever. And they don't know they're not going anywhere. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-'aliyyil 'azim. Let me continue now. قال المؤلف رحمه الله, the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, said, وَالثَّانِي أَبَدِيٌّ لَا أَزَلِي. The second is everlasting, not eternal. أي أن له بداية ولا نهاية له, meaning that it has a beginning, but it does not have an end. وَهُوَ الْجَنَّةُ وَالنَّارُ, and that is the garden and the fire. فَهُمَا مَخْلُوقَتَانِ, and so the both of those are created. أي لهما بداية, meaning they have a beginning. إلا أنه لا نهاية لهما, except that they do not have an end, or however they do not have an end. أي أبديتان, meaning they are both everlasting. فلا يطرأ عليهما خراب ولا فناء, and so there does not happen to them any decrepitude. Any paradise and hell, they do not collapse, they do not crumble. Kharab, they don't fall apart, they don't go into ruin. awfana, and they do not vanish, limashi'ati Allahi baqa'ahuma, because of Allah's willing their everlastingness. Amma min haythu dhatuhuma, as for in and of themselves, فَيَجُوزُ عَلَيْهِمَا الْفَنَاءُ عَقْلًا, it is valid that they would vanish intellectually. الشرح أن الجنة والنار بقاؤهما ليس بالذات. The explanation is that the garden and the fire, their everlastingness is not intrinsic. بل لأن الله شاء بقاءهما, rather it is because Allah willed for their everlastingness. فالجنة باعتبار ذاتها, and so the garden in and of itself, يجوز عليها الفناء, it is valid that it would vanish. وكذا النار, and likewise the fire, that garden with a capital G and fire with a capital F. باعتبار ذاتها يجوز عليها الفناء, in and of itself it is valid or possible that it vanish. بخلاف الناس والملائكة والجن, as opposed to the humans and angels and genies, فإنهم يفنون, they do indeed vanish, they perish. لأن الله لم يشأ بقاءهم, because Allah did not will for their remaining. فعلم بذلك أنه لا باقي بذاته إلا الله, and so it is known by that there is no everlasting one by himself but Allah. وبهذا يندفع اشتكال بعض الناس لبقاء الجنة والنار, and by this is repelled what is deemed problematic by some people concerning the everlastingness of the garden and the fire. حيث توهم أن في ذلك تشريكا لهما مع الله, where they imagined that in confirming everlastingness for paradise and hell, there is giving someone a share with Allah Ta'ala. يقال لهم, it is said to them, لا يلزم من ذلك المشاركة, that does not necessitate sharing, that Allah and paradise and hell are sharing equality. لأن بقاء الله واجب, because Allah's everlastingness is necessary. أي لا يقبل العقل خلافه, meaning that the intellect does not accept other than that. وَأَمَّا بَقَاءُ الْجَنَّةِ وَالنَّارِ, as for the everlastingness of the garden and the fire, لَيْسَ بَقَاءً وَاجِبًا عَقْلِيًّا, it is not an everlastingness that is intellectually necessary. إِنَّمَا هُوَ مِنَ الْجَائِزَاتِ الْعَقْلِيَّةِ, it is merely amongst the intellectual possibilities. لكن وجب لهما البقاء من حيث حكم الله تعالى ببقائهما. However, everlastingness is necessary for them from the perspective that Allah ordained that they be everlasting, meaning not by themselves. They are not everlasting by themselves. If we want to talk concerning themselves, it is valid that they would perish. So here's what the Shaykh is saying here is like the answer for a question. The question would be, is there any perspective by which we could say that the everlastingness of paradise and hell is necessary? Is there any way to validly say that paradise and hell have a necessary everlastingness? Yes, there is a way, which is what? Not that they are everlasting by themselves. That's not the necessary everlastingness. They are everlasting necessarily because Allah willed for them not to perish. So the necessity of their everlastingness is religious. It's by the religious evidence we knew that. There's no mental evidence, merely the mental evidence alone without religious evidence to say that they are everlasting. So, in other words, the definitively true religious proof confirms that they are everlasting. So we have a definitively true religious proof. Then by virtue of that, it's necessary that they would be everlasting. Not by themselves. They're not everlasting by themselves. If that's not clear, let me know. وَذَلِكَ كَإِثْبَاتِ الْوُجُودِ لِلَّهِ وَلِلْعَالَمِ. This is like confirming existence for Allah and for the world. فَإِنَّنَا نَقُولُ اللَّهُ مَوْجُودٌ وَالْعَالَمُ مَوْجُودٌ. For indeed we say, Allah exists and the world exists. لكن لا يلزم من هذا مشاركة العالم لله في الوجود. However, this does not necessitate that the world shares with Allah the existence, the attribute of existence. لأن وجود الله ذاتي لا موجود بذاته إلا الله. Because Allah's existence is by Himself. There is no one existing by Himself but Allah. And He always existed eternally. He's the only one who is exalted with always existing for no reason and by no cause, by nothing, no onset, no effect of another. أما وجود العالم فليس ذاتيا. As for the existence of the world, it is not intrinsic. بل بإيجاد الله. It is rather by Allah's giving it existence. فلا مشاركة. So there is nothing shared here. وما أحسن قول الشيخ محي الدين ابن عربي. And oh, how nice is the saying of Shaykh Muhyiddin ibn Arabi, لا موجود بذاته إلا الله, which is nothing exists by itself but Allah. وما أبشع قول بعض جهلة المتصوفة. And oh, how ugly, how repugnant, repulsive is the saying of some of the ignorant Sufi claimers. لا موجود إلا الله. Nothing exists but Allah. كذلك قولنا الله حي قادر مريد سميع بصير عالم متكلم باق. Likewise, our saying that Allah is living, powerful, willing, a hearer, a seer, knowledgeable, a speaker, and everlasting. فليس هناك مشاركة بينه وبين خلقه. There is not there any sharing between him and his creation. فإن حياة الله أزلية أبدية. For indeed the life of Allah is eternal and everlasting. أما حياة غيره فليست كذلك. As for the life of something else, it's not like that. وكذلك يقال في بقية الصفات. And likewise is said about the rest of the attributes. فلا يكون هذا مشاركة ومماثلة. And so this would not be a sharing or a resemblance or a likeness. إنما هذا اتفاق في التعبير. This is merely agreement and expression. نعبر عن الله بأنه موجود. We express about Allah that He exists, or He is existent. موجود, He is existent. وَنُعَبِّرُ عَنِ الْعَالَمِ بِأَنَّهُ مَوْجُودٌ. And we express about the world that it is existent. وَلَا مُوَافَقَةَ فِي الْمَعْنَى. And there's no compliance here in meaning. The meaning between both is different. As for this word being, some of our brothers, I heard more than one of our brothers denying that, negating that. They said this doesn't work for Allah, as if they think that being means a body. When I was a new Muslim, one of the brothers, I was hanging out with him. He's a few years older than me, had a wife and kids already, had been learning from AICP. And so I was a new Muslim, and we took a liking to each other. So we always used to talk about religion. And then once he said, more than once. But once he said, like being, we don't say Allah is a being. I didn't say anything. I didn't agree with that. And I think he noticed that I didn't agree with that, although I didn't say anything. Like my silence is the indication that I don't really agree with that. So he used to say it from time to time. So one time he just said it again. So I said, khalas, he wants my response. So he said, we don't say Allah is a being. So I said, well, being can mean existing. He said, oh, you mean like that? So like, hello? أما إطلاق لفظ التخلق بأخلاق الله فينبغي تجنبه. As for using this term in Arabic, التخلق بأخلاق الله, it's like saying, it pretty much means to have the manners of God, to take on the manners of God. Shaykh said, فَيَنْبَغِي تَجَنُّبُهُ, this should be avoided. وَقَدْ وَرَدَ فِي هَذَا خَبَرًا لَا أَصْلَ لَهُمَا. There are two reports that came with such an expression, and there is no origin for either of them. Yani they are not authentic. أَحَدُهُمَا تَخَلَّقُوا بِأَخْلَاقِ اللَّهِ. One of them is saying, تَخَلَّقُوا بِأَخْلَاقِ اللَّهِ. It means practice the manners of God. The Christians, they say something like that. وَالْآخَرُ السَّخَاءُ خُلُقُ اللَّهِ الْأَعْظَمِ. The other baseless report is generosity is Allah's greatest manners. خُلُق. فَلَا يَجُوزُ وَصْفُ اللَّهِ بِالْخُلُقِ. It is not valid to describe Allah with manners. وَلَا يَجُوزُ نِسْبَةُ الْخَبَرَيْنِ إِلَى الرَّسُولِ. And it is not permissible to attribute those two reports to the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. قال المؤلف رحمه الله, the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, said, الثالث لا أزلي ولا أبدي. The third is neither eternal nor everlasting. أي أن له بداية وله نهاية, meaning that it has a beginning and it has an end. وهو كل ما في هذه الدنيا, and that is all that is in this earthly life. من السماوات السبع والأرض, from the seven heavens to the earth, meaning all the earths. فلا بد من فنائهما وفناء ما فيهما. And so there is no outcome other than for the heavens and earth to perish, and for whatever is within heavens and earth to perish. Min insin wa jinnin wa malaika, whether humans or genies or angels. Ash-SharH inna kulla ma fi samawati wal ardi wa ma fihima min insin wa jinnin wa malaikatin wa bahaima wa ghayriha yafna, is that indeed everything in heavens and earth and whatever is within them, whether human or genie or angels or animals or other than those, shall perish. قال تعالى, said God, exalted is He, كل من عليها فان, everyone upon the earth shall perish, the earth. أي أن كل من على الأرض يفنى, meaning that everyone who's on earth shall perish. Keep that ayah in mind. Then, inshallah, we'll give you hikmah. There's hikmah in that ayah. وَفَنَاءُ الْبَشَرِ مَعْنَاهُ مُفَارَقَةُ أَرْوَاحِهِمْ لِأَجْسَادِهِمْ. And the perishing of the humans, its meaning is for their souls to depart their bodies. It doesn't mean that all their bodies, every single particle of their existence must vanish into nothingness. It doesn't mean that. Sheikh Samir used to say, vanish. Until one time I had to ask him, because I was finding it. I said, well, if he really means literally vanish, then that's a little hard for me to accept. So let me just double check. So I said to him, what does vanish mean? I know what vanish means. The meaning of the question is, what do you mean when you say it vanishes? So I said to him, what does vanish mean? He said it means it breaks into pieces. So then it doesn't mean vanish actually. So it means they will perish, something like that. They will go into ruin. Vanish means disappear. So some of our sheikhs, you might need to catch them on that one so that they don't give someone a wrong impression. فَالْآيَةُ نَصٌّ فِي فَنَاءِ مَنْ عَلَى وَجْهِ الْأَرْضِ. This verse is explicit concerning the perishing of whoever is upon the face of the earth. وَأَمَّا فَنَاءُ أَهْلِ السَّمَاوَاتِ. As for the perishing of the people of the skies, that's the angels, though some people don't agree with calling them people, but I believe it works. فَهُوَ يُفْهَمُ مِنْ قَوْلِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. That is understood from the saying of Allah Ta'ala, وَيَبْقَى وَجْهُ رَبِّكَ, which means the self of your Lord shall remain. Yani, not the creations. So that gives us the proof that also in heavens, what's in heavens shall perish. About people, some people said, don't say, some of our people, more than one, they said, don't say, when you say Ahlu Samawat, don't say the people of the skies because the angels aren't people. Yeah, that's why they use inhabitants. They say the inhabitants of the sky. They don't want to say people. And one brother, he actually made fun of me because I said to him, I gave him a reference. I used a reference that he didn't accept. So I said, well, look, like, don't you see, like, take, for example, that story, The Lord of the Rings. So don't they have, like, they claim hobbits and humans and elves and dwarves. So they're saying they're not all humans, but they call them peoples. Each one is, those are peoples and those are peoples and those are peoples. And I told him also, look at even other stories, like they talk about aliens, so-called, and that the one alien, and I gave him an actual reference. He said, my people, I think it was from District 9. You know that movie District 9? It was like supposed to be like insect guys. So he said, my people, such and such. So that brother, he made a joke out of that. And he said, yeah, those Salikis, those ones you're giving me, those are the Salikis in English. You know, Saliki means like, you know how the old Arabs, they spoke Arabic with natural disposition? He said, those you gave me the references of the Salikis in English. So he was making fun of me. MashaAllah. He does have a point though. I can't say he doesn't have a point, but also I think he's missing the point here. That they also understand English like we do. وَمَعْنَى الْوَجْهِ هُنَا الذَّاتِ. And the meaning of wajh in this ayah is the self. يَبْقَى اللَّهِ, meaning Allah shall remain. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. And Allah is best.
الله حي ذو امتنان أولا وما له مكان سبحانه قد جل عن